I view relationships within a free bucket kind of system. So you have your own bucket, your partner has your own bucket, and then you have a relationship bucket. So when we come to relationship, we make sure our bucket's full. And then if both of us are full, we can add to the relationship bucket. And this is the same when we're going into a space where we want a partner. Like, because I think the desire for a partner is a beautiful thing, and we need to own that.
Hello, this is Andrea with Our Daydream, back again with another awesome guest. His name is Dean Bentley. He is a men's empowerment and embodiment coach. His specialty is men's work facilitator and relationship dynamics. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe because we have an awesome guest coming up every week and I don't want you to miss out. So without further ado, here is Dean. Hello.
Hey, how are we going?
I'm doing good.
It's an absolute pleasure to jump in and tune in today.
Yeah. I've been watching your motivational videos and stuff, and so I hope people will tune in later on down the road. But so I did already introduce you, and I'm kind of curious what led you to coaching.
What led me to coaching? So a lot of it was my own personal journey of feeling very lost in the world and not really being sure of what I wanted to do. And I went on my own spiritual journey, felt lost, felt depressed, felt anxious. And it was like, what is all this? Like, I grew up in a society, in a culture where there wasn't much knowledge about healing, around connection to self. It was a very country town I grew up in. So where it was, there was not exposure to these modalities, these healing techniques that could allow us to actually tap into ourselves. And I tried therapy and I tried different modalities like that. And I found it was lacking something. And then through my own experience, I got open to all these different ways of life, new spiritualities, new ways of looking at the world, and new modalities such as breath work, meditation, and just simple tools that helped change my life. And then on that journey, I learned so much. I was like, wow, seeing what it did for me, I wanted to bring that to other people, because for a lot of my time, I didn't have someone alongside of me who could be like, hey, what about this? Look at this, and guide me on that journey. And then when I started working with coaches myself, originally there was a desire to coach people when I started working with coaches, and it was like, holy shit. Yeah, it just changed my life. And really just working with coaches and seeing how they shifted my perspective, how I was able to deepen into myself and awaken to the depths of my own soul. I was like, I want to do this for others. I want to help share that. I want to share that with the world. And then it just started forming its own synchronistic patterns that allowed me to step in. Like, I moved cities, and then some men asked if I wanted to start meditating and running breath work for them. And then I got invited to facilitate at retreats, and then clients just started appearing, and there was a lot of work in that, but it just happened step after step and led me to this path where I am now.
That's beautiful. It's like once you get in alignment with what you're actually supposed to do, things just kind of unfold naturally.
Yeah. I truly believe that. And when I look at other people on this journey, there's that thing of that there is always death in that. Like, I say that it happened synchronistically, and there was so many deaths within that of being like letting go of my friends, the city I was in, like stepping away from community, looking to go find myself, trying something new, which was completely outside of the box, and like giving up my path of becoming an engineer, talking to my family around that and being like, hey, I'm not going down that. I've done 4 years of uni and I know this isn't for me. And just like letting different aspects die to allow.
Yeah. Where are you from exactly?
So I'm based here in Australia, on Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's really sad because I think that's how I dealt with probably like all my life up until 34, just extremely depressed and hating my life and completely miserable. And it took that point too of just like complete, like, I can't be who I am anymore because I'm dead already. And so like I feel like oftentimes, we hit those points where it's like that's whenever there's like a birth taking place, but people will take that as like, well, there's nothing to live for anymore, and take their lives. And I'm just like, well, if you hold on a little bit longer, it's about ready to open up something new.
I truly believe that. And when I look at that, people taking their own lives, I feel it's such a societal issue because we've lost the initiations. We've lost people taking them away to have a spiritual death. And
Yeah.
we are a death with a physical death because it feels like we're dying. It feels like we're getting ripped apart
Yeah.
on that soul. And it's like, oh, there's nothing left. Like, I can't keep on living like this. And that's what a lot of people experience. It's what I experienced in that time. I want this to end. I'll do anything to let this end. And no one teaches us that that's the invitation for us to change, or to be like, what actually more is there? Can we find the truth within ourselves that's asking to come through? Can we meet that version that's like, hey, I want something more. I want to feel connected to the world, to the universe, to God, whatever word we have for it. But it feels that longing. And it's that invitation. And I'm so passionate about seeing people realize that, because when it's in that dark night, it's like, I'm dying. I've got to let it all go. And actually having that experience where it's like, it's only a spiritual death. It's only an ego death. It's only that part of us that is no longer serving, that wants to die, and something wants to rise from them, ashes like a phoenix. And it doesn't feel like that at the time, though.
No. No, and yeah, it's like that's the only way you can find that. That is the only way you can find this bridge to a better life, a better view, a new way. Your passion, your drive, and all this is, breaking away from like, this is what the world told you that you were. This is who the world said that you were. This is who, society said that you were, who the school told you that you were, or who your parents told you that you were. And so I feel like that's the only way really that you can find that complete, like, I'm in the world, but that's not who I am. I'm not who I am weighed out against the world, but I'm my own individual and I'm free in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I see that, like looking back on my own journey, going through that experience where it feels like everything I had believed was crumbling, all the beliefs, all the rules, all the programming that had been put on me by society, by my family, by friends, and actually going through that experience where it feels like everything's crumbling inside and it's been ripped apart. And it's like, can I trust that? Do I believe in that? What is actually anymore? Is any of it true? And feeling like none of it makes sense. Like, it is that dissolving, that chrysalis of the caterpillar that allows it to turn into a butterfly. We've got to be able to dissolve into that like goo where there's nothing anymore to actually emerge into something new. And I know for myself that I didn't want to do that. I was like in ignorance. And early on my journey, I'd like, fuck, I wish I never woken up. It would have been easier if I didn't see all the conditions, all the toxic behavior, all the programming, all the pain that wasn't serving me. Perhaps then it would have been easier if I wasn't feeling that. Maybe I could just shut it down again. And there were so many times where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, because it hurts, it's painful. And I have the greatest compassion for people going through that, because
Yeah.
it isn't an easy journey when they begin to open themselves and go through that. But on the other side, there is so much more. And it's always a continuous journey, tapping into what's next, what's more, how can we be in this? How can we open to life? How can we show ourselves compassion and remember the truth of who we are outside of all of that? Because that's the only way we get to live the life we want. Like, otherwise we got to be stuck.
Right. I don't know. I don't know about you, but before I had that experience, I would have never pictured 3 years, like it's only been 3 years. I would have never imagined that I would be where I am right now. Like I didn't even see that human being inside of me. I could have never dreamed it up. I would have never guessed it. It's just the exact opposite of who I was for 36 years. Like it's not even who I ever was. It's like this whole nother human being that I could never imagine that exists now,
Yeah. Oh, I feel that so deeply. Like
Yeah.
the parallels, the paradox of who I was before. To think I'm on a podcast right now. I've done this a few different times. I'm coaching people, I'm working with people, I'm facilitating big journeys for them. And then to think who I was in the past to get to here, there was always that potential. And like, if I'm honest, there was something deep inside of me that knew there was more. Did I know that at the time? Not really. No, it was just like a little undercurrent, a little seed that hadn't sprouted yet. And it was always there, but I was never aware. And I feel like that's the thing. People like think they're stuck in what they are and who they are. And the truth is we actually get to choose who we want to be, how we want to be, because there's so much more for us if we just say yes to our own dreams, yes to what we're capable of. Because once we step outside of the known, anything is possible. We step into pure creation because we shape this reality with our beliefs, with our views, with what we do. And when we change that, we can create anything we desire.
Yeah. Do you think, because I spend a lot of time trying to tell people that my belief system is that the only way to really find peace and comfort and even fruitfulness is to stay in a lack of judgment. So that's a lack of judgment in your circumstances. It's just like to understand like these things are happening right now, like they're supposed to happen, and people and things like that. Do you believe that? And if you do believe that, do you think that that would kind of bypass that death?
Mm. So I'm in two minds about this. Firstly, I view this more of an acceptance. So it's an acceptance of what is, because for myself on my journey, I went down a path where I'd be like, oh, I can't judge people. And then I'd spin into a shame spiral of myself when I did find that I had judgments around people. So I believe that judgment is inherent in our humanness, that we all judge over and over again. Like I judge people all the time. The judgments could be good or bad, but they're there. Like it's how I discern what's true in this world. And the acceptance of them judgments for me is the thing that allows me to move through the world in a different way, because it's like, oh, I judged that. I didn't like their hair, or I thought that outfit wasn't good. But it's like, oh, cool. I acknowledge that. It doesn't mean I'm going to do anything about it. It doesn't mean I need to say anything or change anything. It's just that awareness that, oh, there's a humanness in me that said, hey, I think it should be a different way. And
I like that word better. Acceptance is a better word. Absolutely. Yeah.
Accept our humanness, because like we are spirit, we are soul, we are all these things very high up, and then we're human experience. And in this human experience, we encounter our own humanness, and I found on my journey that a lot of spiritual teachings made me feel shameful of my own humanness. And
Yeah.
me, it's the integration of our spiritual and our human that allows us to prosper. So if we can accept our humanness and realize we are not required to act upon that humanness, like if we have desires, for example, I work a lot in the sexuality space and allow men to actually own their sexuality. You can have desire and that's okay without it being needed to be acted upon. And you can just honor it. If you find a woman beautiful, that's perfectly okay. It's like, oh, she's beautiful. Okay, cool. Acknowledge that, accept that. And it doesn't mean you have to do anything with it, because a lot of the men in my space have shut themselves off from that. And they're like, if I think she's beautiful, it means I'm a bad person. If I find her she's sexy, I'm a bad person because I shouldn't have that. So I'm very careful around how I word that, because there's an acceptance of our innate humanness that then allows us to navigate this world in a different way. And shame being such a big fin for men in, so I'm careful of that. And then the acceptance piece, I believe we can accept while also wanting more and hold in that paradox for myself, because I love my life right now. And I also have this human desire to create more, to serve greater, to see what else I can create in this world. And acceptance has no drive towards it. So if I fall into a state of complete acceptance, I can have them moments where it's completely blissful, where it's like, oh my God, this is everything I want. And then still feel that desire to move forward and see what else can happen. Because if we're all God in human form, I believe that experience is to see what is possible while we're here and see what we can. So I with the higher and the lower worlds, where one is acceptance and everything's perfect coming from the higher self, and then my humanness is like, I want more, and I can also trust that process and accept this is where I am, that's where I'm going. So there's some paradoxes I find within that.
I love that. What is the most common theme you see whenever working with men? Like, I know if I really dissect the world, my world, I see a lot of insecurity in men that I feel like should be, more like, I'm the man, you know what I mean? But also with that humility too. I feel like a lot of men in today's society, that they're not really seeing what they actually possess within.
Yeah, I feel that. And so I view there's generally two types of men I can work with, and there's elements of overlap in each space. So firstly, there's kind of the hyper masculine, think army man who's disconnected from his feelings, his emotions, and can be very aggressive, assertive, and all of that. And on the other side, the flip side of the coin, we have what I call the passive man, or the nice guy, who is just like very soft and he's open and he's like gives a lot, but he doesn't own his actual masculinity. And both of these actually come from a place of insecurity, which you've mentioned, of that disconnect from their own true masculinity, because there has been so much in our history that has stopped men actually having a healthy relationship with their masculinity, feeling like they need to be stoic, no feelings, no emotions, or they've got to be really sensitive as not to create unsafety for the feminine. So this has prevented a lot of men connecting with their own feminine. So when you're saying they're unsure of what is within, to me, I view that as the feminine aspects within a man. So this could be the anima as well. If we look at Carl Jung and his work, he speaks about that inner soul, which I believe is inherently feminine. And because there's been a suppression of the feminine in the world throughout the history of the world up to this point, men have become disconnected from that. And the feminine is what creates healthy masculine within a man himself. So if he's been disconnected from that, if he's not in tune with his emotions, how can he be in tune with a woman as well? How can he actually feel her, be present with her? And so the journey is always connecting to their own emotions. So for the hypermasculine, it's about coming back to love and opening himself to feel him, because he's probably always in his anger. That's his main emotion. Where the nice guy, he might be more in his sadness and disconnected from his anger. So for him, it's about reconnecting to his anger in a healthy way, because otherwise he's got walls that he doesn't actually show people, he doesn't share with people, and he's just closed off, and he's not able to go within himself, because that anger is like a big wall that says, hey, if you're not willing to feel the anger you have within yourself, you're unable to go deeper inside of yourself, because I see anger as a gateway to our deeper emotions. Like, it opens us to sadness, love, compassion, joy. And if a man doesn't feel that, he's unable to go within. He's unable to tap into the depths.
That makes sense. I blame that. I blame that on, it's like the daughter is born and there's a certain way that she's handled, and then the son's born and there's a certain way that he's handled. And from, little up, it's like you have to fit this certain mold of what a man looks like, because that's what a man is and that's what a man does. And when I look at that, it's basically suppressing your feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's put us in a box that said, hey, this is how it has to be. This is what I think this needs to be for it to be right, for it to be proper. And I'm sure you've realized this on your own spiritual journey. The boxes we get put in is the limitations others put upon us.
Yeah.
So if the journey is about stepping outside of them boxes, whether it's the boxes people put on you because you're a woman or you're a man or you're anything else, like they're like, you're this, so it means this. But really, it's about finding out what's true for yourself, like either a man or a woman, and removing yourself from that box, seeing what's outside of that, to be like, oh, cool, I can change, I can do something else.
Yeah.
And just allowing that, because in boxes, society likes to put everything in a box. And we do this because it creates an illusion of safety.
Yeah.
So if we say, oh, that is that, and that means that, people are like, oh, I know that, so it's safe now. So if we say this is what a man is, that means I know what a man is, and that's safe, because then I know exactly how it's going to perform. We like to put things in boxes like a computer. So it's like, if you press A, an A is going to come up on the screen. If you press B, a B is going to come up on the screen. But because life is so intricate, we can't actually put boxes on like that. It doesn't work. So what we need to do is allow ourselves to be like, oh, at times A brings up a C on the screen, L brings up an M. Always, there's an inherent chaos in this. And when we can embrace that and let go of this desire for known, because we have no faith anymore. So there's no belief in that we're guided by something greater, which is a big part of this. So we look to use science as our religion, because it's like, if I can scientifically put this in a box, then I can say what will happen. But there's no faith in, oh, I will be provided for, I will be guided. There's a lack of this nowadays. So people want that safety, which can only come from labeling things through a scientific method, which then makes a box which says that you have to be this way. And if you're not, there's something wrong with you.
It seems like society is more and more open to the spiritual concepts, but I feel like a lot of times it's whack, because you have those posts on Facebook, like, you have to be positive, good vibes, only think positive thoughts. And something that I really is really been an epidemic is the concept of the narcissist, which is kind of like, I'm not going to take responsibility for the relationships that I have put myself in, or because I feel like if I'm getting myself into a relationship that's toxic, there's probably something that needed healed inside of me. that brought that person to me in the first place, because had I have done my inner work, I would have never even looked in that direction in the first place. And so, two different complete topics. I kind of went on a ramble there, but there's this social media, you know, these memes and different things like that, that kind of, you know, makes you lack responsibility for your life a little bit. And also, you know, has you looking in a place where it's like you're to reach an expectation that's not even able to like you're not even able to reach that expectation.
Oh, these are like two of my biggest
Yeah.
sins I have against a lot of the spiritual community, like the over positive bullshit. Like
Yeah.
Humans, we have emotions, we go through that, and to me, it's about the transmutation of energy. So I view as emotion as energy in motion, and each emotion can serve a different purpose. Like for myself, if I'm sad, if I write poetry, it connects in a different way. Like I can grieve deeply and write beautiful poetry. If I'm angry, I can convert that into passion for my work, for my mission. Like, and if I'm happy, I'm joyful, I can bring that element to spaces to allow that. And if we're always like, oh, I've got to be happy, it's rejection. And every time we reject something, it creates like restriction and resistance, because it's like, no, I can't do that. There's shame, and then that spirals down. And we actually get an experience because we're like, I'm sad. Oh no, I'm sad. I'm a bad person. I shouldn't be feeling sad. And
Or I
that
have to fix this.
Yeah. What if we just accepted it, felt it, allowed it to move through us and come out the other side? Because emotion will always move, but it's a restriction that puts a kink in it, like the hose. Like if you have water flowing through a hose and that water is our emotions, if you kink it by saying, hey, I can't feel that, I can't experience that flow of energy, that water stays in the pipe, it builds up and it doesn't go anywhere. But if you just let it, unkink it and let it flow, which is just accepting it, it moves through you. So you're sad for what, half an hour, and then you can get on with your life. But people don't feel that they can feel sadness, anger. So it stays with, hold it, and it restricts their life. Because if you're not allowing energy to flow, of course you've got to have less energy. You can feel depressed because you're not actually experiencing your emotions, and it feels stagnant. It's like life isn't through us. So it's positive, over positive shit. It doesn't serve us because it creates shame for people who actually experience emotions, and we all do. And it's the acceptance of that. And the other piece I had a rant about, and I forgot where you took that.
The narcissist epidemic in the spiritual community.
Yeah. This gets me because a core tenet for me in this life is like, it's all on us. We have to take personal responsibility for our entire lives. Yes, that means other people can be assholes, they can be dicks and all of that. And it means we invited them or allowed them into our space if that is the truth. Like what you said about narcissists, if we get in a relationship with a narcissist, firstly, it's showing us something, and that there's a healing that needs to take place there. And so we can own that, we can take responsibility. And I believe that perception is projection. So everything we perceive in our world is actually a projection of our inner world. So if we see it outside of us, ourselves, if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, what part of you is narcissistic? Where are you being a narcissist in your own life? And if you heal that up, that person will either leave or they will heal themselves. It's the law of attraction. Like only the things that you connect with, resonate with at the same level can be attracted into your field. And if you're vibrating at a different frequency, you won't be affected or they won't come into your field. And this victim mentality that says, poor me, and this comes from secondary gain because our society has taught us that if we're the victim, if something's wrong, then we get validation. Like, how many times has we experience it's like, oh, I didn't get that, and someone pats you on the back and is like, oh, it's okay, you can do better next time.
Yeah.
Get that validation for having a problem, or people are complaining about the day, and it actually creates connection with people, because then there's a resonance, and it's like, oh yeah, I had a shit day too. But is that the things you want to be talking about? Because it's this victim mentality that I have it bad, so then I can have something to talk about, because, well, here in Australia, there's tall poppy syndrome, because we were a convict society. So if the person who's like, oh my God, I had a great day, they kind of get snipped down, because it's like, there's something wrong with them. There's this belief that if you're too happy, if you're too over the top, there's something wrong. And like, everyone just stay low. Don't stand up too high or you get snipped. And it's like, what kind of programming is that?
Yeah.
Like, let's just take responsibility, admit we can be the creators of our life, and be like, oh, if I got in that situation, yeah, it's shit. And I have compassion for them people. And it's only on that person that can change it. It's a decision.
Right. Right. And I think oftentimes too is the idea that, you know, because somebody is smiling all the time, we need to beat them down a little bit because they're like too happy. But the thing that they miss is, how many times did they go to work and fake a smile after they really had a crappy morning? You know what I mean? Like, we fail to understand that we don't fill everybody in on everything that's actually happening to us in our lives. But I definitely believe that, like, whenever I have somebody coming at me that day, I'm like, what type of childhood trauma or past trauma is coming back up again? And here we go again with another cycle.
Yeah, and it will continue to come up, because we're always growing and we're always evolving. And sometimes it comes back in to be like, hey, did you learn your lesson? And it's like a yes, and then it leaves for good. It's like, hey, have you actually integrated that? Because there's a lot of knowledge we can have. And then it's actually about having that embodied knowing of that. So knowledge is one thing, and then when it's in the body, it's wisdom. And we can actually change our lives with that. We can actually be like, hey, no, put a boundary in place. I'm not going to accept that. Or
Right.
just say, no, I'm not available for this, or whatever it is, to change how the universe interacts with us. Because the things we say no to are the things that we tell the universe we're not available for, and it allows space for our yeses.
Yeah, it's kind of like shutting it down in the action. It's like, you're not gonna arousal me right now because that's something that happened like 10 years ago. But this is where I am right now. I've already done past that already. Like, I'm here now, and I'm not gonna allow that to arousal me right now. But, you know, where am I actually at right now?
It's always this test of our nervous system, of our capacity to be like, are you integrating? Are you evolving? And here's a little test to see. And when they come in, it's like a celebration, because, oh my God,
I love that.
learned it again. How great. Like, we get to lift that up and be like, that was incredible. That was epic. Let's go.
I love that.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, that was good.
mm.
So, you do relationship coaching. Should men lead or no?
Should they or not? Is that the question?
Yes.
So this is like one with nuance, this question. So yes, and not always. So, I mean, you can, and it's okay if you always do, but I know for myself, I desire to also be led in my relationship, because if I'm always leading, if I'm always taking charge, that can be draining. But I also want to make sure that I can lead, that I'm able to lead, that I can step into that position where my partner can surrender into her feminine, and experience what it's like to be in that relationship where she's been led. Like there's elements of both here that I believe are truly needed to bring into this world. It's so good to be playing in that. Like if we look at the works of David Dieter or John Wineland, the masculine, there's always leading, and this is the masculine energy. And the feminine energy surrenders, it is nourished. And in that, when there's masculine and feminine poles, there's polarity being created, that attraction like a magnet, like north and south pole. So in that, if one person is in the masculine and the other person is in the feminine, there is still attraction. So this is where that it doesn't necessarily have to be the man in the leadership role for the polarity to be in occurrence. So the feminine, the female can lead and be in her masculine, and the man could be in his feminine and still create polarity. It still works. And we all have a natural essence, which we connect more deeply to. So generally men are more masculine, feminine, females are more feminine. And there is still leeway in this where it could be a 50-50 or the other way around as well, but generally that's the case. So like 80% of the time, it can be useful for a man to lead, to then allow the feminine to surrender, to create polarity within relationship. Outside of that, if you're uninterested in polarity, so like a workplace, in anything else, it completely changes it, because what's the point of polarity in that case? Does that land?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be transparent. I would fancy myself more so masculine. So in my case, whenever I imagine myself in a relationship, I imagine somebody that's going to take me into the feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want them to always be leading and allow you to surrender into that.
Allow me to surrender. But then if you think about the fact of, you know, them always leading, like they would have to, I would have to lead every now and again, because if they're going through a thing, it shouldn't be that place where, you know, boys don't cry, man up, things like that from like the childhood. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, and like there's nuance with this. So we can have preference and we can be like, I want this. And it's the same as what we were talking about before with the boxes. If you've always got to be that way, it can create limitations. Like if it's an open box and 90% of the time we want that, that's perfect. And then if we're like, okay, if it's not always like that, I can still be okay in this, and recognize that that box is what we prefer, but there's more than that box. It allows us to open in a different way. So if it's like, hey, he leads 80-90% of the time, and then he also, you know, wants to be led 10% of the time, 20% of the time, can that still be okay, knowing that he does the other part as well? Because knowing that there's a box that's been put on him, and the same with the feminine, that she should always surrender.
Got you.
That then allows them to shift and play within them dynamics that allows more opening. Because if we put ourselves in that box, I always believe that can create limitations. And when we're talking in this, there's nuances to this as we look at more of the light and dark feminine and the light and dark masculine. And for yourself, you may find you're actually more in your dark feminine, which would then require the dark masculine to allow you to surrender into the light feminine, where it's like a bit more flowy.
Yeah,
And so,
I never heard that concept yet.
yeah,
I haven't delved into the dark and the light feminine and the dark and the light masculine.
yeah, it's another nuanced framework for all of that as well. And it just allows some deeper understanding, and we can be any of it. So a man can be a light femme, he can be a dark femme. It's just energy to give the concept a framework to then be able to play within it and be like, oh, if I'm in my dark masculine, she can be in her light femme, and that creates a lot of polarity. If she's in her dark femme, I'm in my light masculine, there's still polarity, or dark and dark, light and light. It just creates more nuance to play within.
Got you. So, I know in my life, I've always been a magnet for the men that don't really want me all that much, but whenever they have me, it's like they lose their whole identity in me. So it's like how I'm feeling dictates the way he's feeling. You know, how I'm moving dictates how he's moving. And so I'm like, hey, can I just be available to feel what I'm feeling right now and you be okay in that?
Yeah, yeah. So going back to that concept we just talked about, that is to me what I see in this, and like only a little bit of what I see, that you would be shown more dark feminine characteristics, and he would most likely be in his light masculine. So the light masculine is the people pleaser. It's the nice guy who always wants to make it okay, who always wants to be like, oh, it's okay, I can look after you, I can make everything okay. And he doesn't feel exactly solid because he hasn't connected to his dark masculine, which is the anger, which is the animal, which says, I'm fucking here, I'm living my life this way, I'm going this direction. And for him to access that would allow him to be okay when you're going through your emotions, and allow himself to hold his own more so. So he'd be like, oh, she's going through that. Hey, do you need anything?
Yeah.
No. But okay, I'm just going to do my thing. If you need anything, I'm here for you. And creating like a communication which allowed him to create safety in this.
Right, rather than fury. Like, oh, I don't know what's happening right now. I feel out of control. I can't fix this. See, like in my mind, I would have thought more so dark, you know, because it's so, it's like, okay, well, I'm down right now. I have to figure out how to stand up. And then I also have to lift him up and out of where he's at, because now he's in a place of self-defeat and, you know, fury because he can't rectify the situation. And so he's feeling out of control. But that's really a neat way to look at it, because it can kind of help me with my healing a little bit, is understanding that that was actually caring in a corrupt manner.
Yeah. And like when you say that, when you mention fury into that, what I see then is that he's actually in his, like the dark masculine, or is kind of controlling, and in its expression. So when it's not integrated, it's like, I want to fucking control everything because I pick you up. So there's still this element of the dark masculine, which you're right, but it's coming out in a manipulation and a controlling way because he hasn't integrated that emotion into himself where he could hold himself, and in that he wants to fix.
Well, if you're all the way into a relationship, you would do anything in the world for them, but at the same time, it's like you're that strong in who you are that you would be okay if it would go away too. I think, because that's what I blame a lot of the fury on in like my past relationships is that I get like, I'm all in this 100%, but if it was to end tomorrow, I would be okay. I would be all right. And so like, I think that's where like a lot of, you know, that control would come into play, because it's like, I don't know what she could possibly do because she's okay independently on her own. But see, in my mind, I think that we should all be that way. We should all be given to our partner 100%, but also we should be individuals in that as well and be okay singular.
Yeah. And I completely agree. Like this is the nuance of completely being in a relationship. And yes, if it ends, like grief, and you go through all the emotions that associate with the death of a relationship. And that's completely normal. And like a man in that situation, using your example, he may associate, oh, she's okay with, she doesn't care. So what's the point of me relationship? And that's most likely the story that he says, because it's like, oh, if she's okay without me, what am I being here for? And this comes back to enmeshment when he was a child, because he got validation for being able to be of service to his mum. And so he would have been like, oh, if I'm needed, I'm loved. And that would have been his story. So when he's not needed, it's this disconnect of, what am I good for? Like, what do I bring to the relationship if I'm not needed?
Yeah.
And he's confused of what to do in this situation. He's like, she doesn't need me. Well, like, what's the point of me being in this relationship? Do I want to be in this relationship? And like in that, it's the invitation for the feminine to be vulnerable, because we can still be very emotional and allow that to be seen while also being completely okay on our own. And up to me, the invitation of the feminine is to invite the masculine in, because the feminine always invites the masculine deeper, is to be vulnerable enough to admit our feelings and be like, hey, I really do care deeply, and express that, where he can feel that. So then he's like, oh, she wants me. I know she wants me here, and I can feel the depths of her love and connection she desires with me. And that will allow him to step into more of his true masculine, where he's like, oh, I know my worth. Because there is a deep healing of that I'm not good enough story for the masculine, of being like, what am I here for? Like, am I good enough? And all of this. And the emotion of the feminine invites us into the truth of our masculinity, because it's like, oh, fuck, she's here for this. I can feel her. And then he can feel himself.
I love that. Another thing, like, that I see in society is basically taking all your exes along with you on the journey.
Yes. Yes. I believe. Yeah, this one gets me. And I've been guilty of this in the past. And like, for me, I had many experiences. I dated a lot of Americans that were here for a short amount of time and then would go back to America. And the relationship ended because they went home, rather than actually any problems, any of that with them. And it was beautiful. And it was really, truly great being a part of that experience. And through that, I collected a lot of mementos for them. And it was like, oh, cool. Like, when I think of this, I remember them, and it's really beautiful because we had such a great time. But then at some point I was like, wait, and I see this with others too, because I know it. I'm holding on to this for what purpose? Oh, because it creates safety, because it creates like this sense of security that I'm still loved by these people, that if I don't find someone else, it's okay, I was loved here. And in that, it didn't allow me to love fully, because there was still this holding onto the past. And it's like, do we want that as we go into new relationships? Because if we're still holding onto the past and being like, oh, they still love me, it was still a good relationship, or they meant so much to me, or they hurt me, whatever it was. If we hold on to that and take it with us, there's always going to be that 90% in on any relationship. We can never be 100% in, because if we're playing it safe and being like, hey, there's someone else out there who loves me, and if this doesn't work out, I can go to them, or I can be with them, or I was loved by this other person, and that means that I'll be okay too. Like, if we're playing like that in any relationship, we're not going to be in, and that hurts everyone in the situation. So for me, what I did, I went and burnt all my shit, because I'm like, no, when I'm calling in my relationship, I don't want that to be in my field. I need to let that go. Do any practices that need to be let go, clear up any of the old energies. I had conversations with old exes that I felt didn't end in a good way, because to clear up that energy allows us to move forward. and it can take work. And I believe if we want our actual relationship, we need to be true to that and say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I'm willing to give. And I'm going to give all of that over so that I can actually step into a relationship in a new way. And there can be deep work in that process because we don't need that shit.
No. All women are this, all men are that. And it's like, you know, if you're going to see this woman as this already because you've been hurt before in the past, chances are that's how she's going to manifest in your relationship, because you're not giving her a chance to even move outside of this mold that you had already put on. Like, she's totally going to hurt me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if that pattern is playing out in a person's relationship, I would dig even deeper. If they've been in a relationship that's been the same twice, how is that the same relationship they had with their mum or their father? Because we often repeat patterns we had in our family, in our intimate relationships, and we play them dynamics again. So if we're like, oh, I'm dating the same person again, how is that your mum? How is that your father? Like, have a look at this. It's confronting, but that's where our deepest wounds come from when we were a child and we got abandoned in the cot for a couple minutes and we cried and then we thought we were unloved from that experience. Like, it's the little things, but that dynamic is enamored in us. Until we unwind that, we won't be able to create what we want. And that's is.
I love that. If I got to a place where I didn't need a partner, it would open me up to be able to receive a partner. But you could take that too far in that direction and actually push a partner away because you're not wanting that. So it's like that too. Like, if I really needed and wanted and desired a partner, you could take that too far too and end up accepting the first person that comes along. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree to both elements in a similar way. So firstly, I agree we shouldn't need anyone. We should be okay. And like, with an intimate relationship, we do need people, we do need connection. So that is a priority. And if our intimate partner is the person we need, we can look at that. And when we come to relationship, I view relationships within a free bucket kind of system. So you have your own bucket, your partner has your own bucket, and then you have a relationship bucket. So when we come to relationship, we make sure our bucket's full. And then if both of us are full, we can add to the relationship bucket. And this is the same when we're going into a space where we want a partner. Like, because I think the desire for a partner is a beautiful thing, and we need to own that. Because I see a lot of men in my space who actually want relationship, and they're like, oh, do I want it? No, maybe, yes, no. And that they do. The truth is they do, but they haven't owned it. And so they start dating, and the person they're dating is like, oh, what do you want? And they're unsure. And it's like, what they truly want is to date and have a long-term relationship, but they're afraid to answer that. And I believe that we need to be honest with what we want, especially in that space. Otherwise, it's creating a trap for the other person, because then we start dating and then it's like, oh, I just want to go with the flow. But the truth is, you want a deep relationship. If you're just saying that, it's going to bring her in. She might feel safe. Oh, he's just going with the flow. He doesn't want a long-term relationship. And then you get hurt because she's just like, oh, I'm going with the flow. I can do anything. But she didn't see that you wanted more because you weren't honest. So our desires in that is also important, because if we reject it and be like, I don't want a relationship or any of that, it creates a disharmony when we're communicating. So it's the balance of being like, I've got a full bucket over here. I'm very happy with my full bucket. And hey, I would love someone else. And if it's true, only if it's true, I would love someone else to help me fill a third bucket or a second bucket. And I'd love to fill that with someone else. And I can own that. And if I get into a relationship, my intention is, hey, I'm actually looking for if this is the case, I'm looking for someone to have a long-term relationship with. I'm looking for someone to just sleep with. I'm looking for someone to be intimate with and actually explore what we like and possibly explore polyamory or whatever it is. Just like be truly honest with the desire. And then from that space being like, okay, move from there, knowing that you've got a full bucket, and then just being honest. And that doesn't mean the next person that comes in is that person. It just means you're honest with them and being like, hey, I'm looking for that longer term relationship, not necessarily with you, and that's what I'm seeking. And I'm going to be honest with my communication to really let you know what I'm seeking and what I'm looking for and what I want.
Yeah, I think oftentimes too, that a lot of people don't know what they want before they accept.
Yeah. It's the truth of it. And some people may have not had an experience in it, or it changes, and it's okay to change. Like we can have an intention, like I'll use like purpose terms and map it over to relationship. Like when I work with people, they're like, what do I do? What's my purpose? It's got to be this one thing that I do for the rest of my life. No, we can have intention and be like, I'm 100% in on what this is. So whether that be relationship, purpose, or whatever, and be so committed to it until if it gets to a point where it's like, oh, actually, I'm changing, I'm moving another way. And this is just what happens. And it's okay to get to that point. But until that point, you need to be 100% of the way in, because otherwise you never truly know. So like, I feel there's a fear in this, a lot of the collective, where it's like, if I commit to something, it's a lifetime commitment. And we can have every intention of it being a lifetime commitment, being like, I'm all in. I believe this will be a lifetime thing. I believe this is what I'm here for. I believe this is the one. This is the relationship that I'm going to grow old in. And then at some point, it may change, and that's perfectly okay. And letting that die as it needs to. But up until that point, being 100% of the way in.
All right, one last thought before we start talking about your coaching business is time in between relationships. So like my belief system is that if you've never attended to all your past relationships, you may need a little bit of extra time, but there should be a certain amount of time in between one relationship to another for you to evolve back into an individual after that relationship had changed who you were.
Yeah, I completely agree. And time for me is a very relative thing. So time moves at different speeds for different people. And I'm not going to put a box and say, you need to do this or you need to do that. If you've never done any deeper work, you're probably going to take more time and require some more time. If you've been married for 20 years and you come out of a relationship, you're probably going to need a bit more time than someone who's been in a relationship for 6 months or a year. Like there's these nuances to this where it's like, okay, what do you actually need? And tuning into yourself. And are you, when you've come to that place, are you coming to the next relationship with a full bucket, or are you coming to hope that they fill your own bucket? So, and tuning into that self, have you created the epic life you want for yourself now that you're single? And being like, I'm actually really happy with my life. Have you done that work where you, like, to me, that would be the indication. Are you at a place in your life where you're actually fulfilled, where you're happy, where you're joyful after your breakup? And
Yes.
to me, that's the biggest thing, because if you're going back in still from like, fuck, I'm hurt, I'm still, I want to feel that hole with another relationship, you've got to create more pain, and it's not going to work. You may, hey, you may end up marrying the next one and it repeat the same process 10 years down the track, and then you're like, oh, now it's time to do the work. But you need to sit with it and fill their own cup before that happens. Otherwise, it will repeat that same pattern. Like for me, when I got in my current relationship, I took 4 months celibacy before I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm ready for a relationship. And for me, that looked like disconnecting from any feminine energy, because even before that, I was in a relationship for about a month, and there was just stuff coming up. It wasn't going well. There was a lot of wounding and it didn't work. And then I was like, I've got some deep work to do. I've been doing the work for a little while before that. And it just showed me how much more I had to do. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to spend these next couple months. And I put that intention. My intention was 3 months. I'm going to spend 3 months celibate and just really go in on myself. And it ended up being 4 months. And then from that place, I opened to the relationship that I'm now in. And it's been my longest relationship since. And it's been the one I plan to go the rest of my life with. And that intention allowed me to open up another space. So it's really about depending on where the person is at from my perspective, and if they've created a life that they want to live on their own, and then inviting someone else in.
I love that. It's awesome advice. And it's definitely needed today in society, because this whole conversation, because there's a lot of hurt individuals walking around. They're hurt from their childhood, and then they find these relationships and they're hurt from it. And it's like when you finally like decide like to look, you know, and start looking there first and building from there first, you know, we all deserve prosperity, you know.
We do. And that we all get it when we allow it to happen.
Yeah. So tell us about your coaching program.
Oh, beautiful. Yes. So if everyone hasn't got yet, I am a coach. I do work in this space. Primarily, it has been with men. I'm opening up at the moment to call in some feminine one-on-one clients, because I've held a space for them recently, and it's been really beautiful to see the feminine held in the masculine space. So I work with people in different ways depending on where they're at. And so I do deep one-on-one work where we just go in, we explore a lot of these woundings, these programming, these conditioning that has occurred in the start of their life, and also see where they want to move and really go deep into that. And then I also do group work. And at the moment, at the end of the month, end of September, I'm creating a group for men to go into exactly what we've been talking about today, how to look at their life and fill their own cup, connect to their masculine, integrate their emotions, so that then they can get to a place where they can show up in a relationship. And this is something that's been so strong in my field that I'm just feeling like it needs to be out there, where men have that quick program where it's short, it's direct, it cuts through a lot of the bullshit that we can be like, it's not overtly spiritual, it's just the hard facts of being like, this is how you can show up, how you can feel, how you can bring your passion, how you can bring your life to a relationship, to truly open a woman and yourself to that relationship. So this is happening end of September, and it's going to be limited to maximum of 20 men, and it's going to be just beautiful. 4 calls, 4 modules, 4 weeks. Nice and simple.
It's beautiful. How do we get a hold of you? I'm gonna place the links in the site, but also yeah, how do we get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the best place is Instagram, and I'm at Weaver of Webs. So Weaver _of _webs. And then I can also be found on Facebook at Dean Bentley.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for joining me. I think that this was definitely a blessing, and I hope that it reaches, you know, many men that can see that there is hope. You know, there is hope.
Thank you. It's been a beautiful experience. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting, exploring these topics, and diving deep. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye. Again, if you like this message, please hit subscribe, because we have an awesome guest coming up every week, and I don't want you to miss out. God bless. Love you. Have an awesome week. I will see you next time. Bye.